Okay, that was the email signature. Now we're going to talk about a couple of the tabs across the top. The one that says Add Edit, when you hover there, you'll see one or two choices. If you just see Media Manager, that gives you the ability to go in and add photos and virtual tours to your listings. If you have Add Edit, and you know if you have Add Edit because you came through a class and you enter people's listings or enter listings for yourself, you'll also see Add Edit there, and then that gives you the ability to go in and add and edit your listings. You won't see these other choices. Those are here because I'm a MLS employee. All right, the next tab, Search. When you hover on it, you'll see your 4 property types: residential, vacant land, commercial, and leasing. And then you'll see one that says Cross Property. Cross Property gives you the ability to search multiple property types at the same time. So if you want to search for sale or for lease, or residential and vacant land, that type thing. What I use primarily Cross Property for is pulling production, my production or other people's production. You know, if I'm trying to pull up all of my listings or all of my sales from the last quarter of the year, I would go to Cross Property to do that because I may have sold residential and vacant land, and it combines everything together. When you hover Cross Property, you do have a search in here called My Listings, and that will give you the ability to pull up your listings fairly quickly. As you hover on each of the property types, if you have not been in here creating and saving searches, the flyout will have 2 options: Default System Search and Make Your Own Search. The default system search is a search that we, the MLS, set up for you that has a bunch of fields that you all typically search. The make your own search is basically a blank slate. There's pretty much no fields in it, and then you add or build your search from there. Once you start creating and saving searches, your flyout will not only contain those 2 default searches I just mentioned, but it will also contain all of your Fusion saved searches. Okay, so they'll all be in this list right here. Now, all of your saved searches are also under the Search Manager, which is under the Search tab. Okay, all right, so we're going to go into Residential Default System Search and do a search. All right, that pulls up the search screen. Now, when you get in here, if you don't see a map, that's because you've turned the map off. So right here is the map button, which you can turn it on or off. There's really, on the search screen, not a purpose for turning it off. It just gives you a bunch of dead space over here. If you think you don't like the map, I recommend you leave it on. I think you'll realize that you do like it. All of the fields, the default fields, are over here, and then there's, of course, a bunch of other fields that you can choose from as well. Now, up on the black toolbar, you'll see it says Enter Required Fields. You're required to enter status or MLS number. So we're going to go ahead and put in a status. We'll just pick Active. So we're just going to click on Active. Once we do that, we tab, and that'll take us out of the field. Now, I could have selected multiple statuses. I would have just clicked on them. You don't need the control key. You would just click the pull down, click on the ones you want, and then tab on out of there. Now, once you select the status and tab, you'll notice now on the black toolbar, it gives you a count. This is called Count on the Fly. And this tells you how many results there are. So every time you enter criteria and you tab out of the field, it'll recalculate the count on the fly for you. So we can see that right now there's 6,725 active residential listings. And as we continue to enter criteria, that number will change. All right, so for property subtype, I'm going to go ahead and enter in house. Now you'll watch that count change. Okay. Now you see it says over limit, so it's not going to let me go in and look at over 6,000 listings. I have to put in some additional parameters. I'll go ahead and enter in a price. Okay, now you see the count change from red to yellow. It says there's 437 matches, and it puts them on the map. And if I wanted to go and look at those, I could click results or details and do that. I'm going to put in additional parameters. You notice in school district, I didn't click the pull down. I just started typing. I typed BRO. It autofilled broken arrow for me, and then I can tab on out of there. That narrowed our results down to 57. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in some bedrooms. There we go. Now I've got it narrowed down to 10. Now it plots them all on the map, and on the map you can come over and hover the symbol, and it will pull up a bubble window for that particular property. The bubble window contains a picture, if it's in the MLS, some information about the property. And then in this dark green section at the bottom, it contains pretty much every tool that you would need for anything you would want to do for this listing. If you want to look at the pictures, or you want to print it or email it or get driving directions or go to the tax record, all sorts of tools there. I'm going to show you a different way on how to get to these tools, but anytime you're looking at your map and you hover, you have these tools. Now I have some extra tools that you won't see. Again, that's because I work for the MLS, but you should have about half of these all the way through that key box. So any of them you hover. Work that way. Okay, so at any time, once the results and details are not grayed out, you can click results or details. Results would take you to the one-line results page, just like we've already been to a couple times, where it lists out your results in a one-line format. Details takes you to the full information on each of the properties. Now, let's say, though, that your results don't make sense. You put in your criteria, you're getting results that you know you shouldn't, and you're trying to figure out why. Rather than scrolling up and down through the search, trying to figure out what you did wrong, you can come down here to the lower left and click the tab that says Criteria Summary. What that does is that opens up your criteria summary in a sentence format. A lot of times it's easier to look at the criteria summary to figure out what you did wrong, rather than scrolling through the criteria fields above. Now, let's say you realize you entered the wrong price. You can click directly on the price here, which would then take you to that field so that you can modify it. Or if you entered something by mistake, you can just click the pink eraser, and that will clear that field. Once you're done viewing the criteria summary, you just click that tab again, and that'll collapse it down. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go up here and click on Results. And that'll take us to the results screen. Again, this is the same screen that we got to with PassFind. And here we are looking at our 10 results. As we're looking at the results, again, if your screen is split in half with a map, that's because the map is turned on. Right here. Okay. I personally like the map off on the results screen, just because I like to look at the full grid of my results. But again, that's totally personal preference. Now, a difference with this map versus the map we were looking at just a minute ago on the criteria screen is you'll notice now all of the properties on the map are numbered, and those numbers correspond with the numbers over here. So if I hover on number 4, I know that's number 4 on my list. In addition, your bubble window now has a little check box right here. And if I check that, then it checks it on my list over to the left. Or I can just go over to the left and check them if I'd like. You also have a feature in the bubble window that says Add to Folder. What's nice about that is, let's say you pull up or you hover and you see this property and you're like, man, that'd be great for so-and-so, but I don't have time to deal with that right now. You can click Add to Folder, and it's going to put that property up in your My folder, and then you can come back later and retrieve it. This is pretty much like instead of writing that MLS number on a Post-it note, and then you can come back later and print it, email it, whatever you need to do. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the map. The map is covered in detail in the Fusion 2 class. As we're looking at the search results, you'll notice some of your prices are a different color with an arrow. That indicates to you that that particular property has had a price change. Now, if it's a price increase, it would be blue and the arrow would be pointing up. Now, what you can do is you can hover on the arrow and it'll tell you how much it was reduced or raised. It gives you the percentage and the previous price. Now, that previous price is not necessarily the original list price. That's the previous price. The agent may have changed it several times during the listing period. Okay, also the numbers on your list, those are called chiclets. If you hover on those, you get that same bubble window that you get when you're looking at your map. Now we're going to talk about the green toolbar. Pretty much every screen that you're in Tempo or in Fusion has a green toolbar. All right, right here where it says View, we're in the grid view. I'm going to change it to Gallery. And that's just a different way to look at the exact same results. So if you like this view, you can switch it to Gallery. You still have your little check boxes, so you can go through and select the properties that you're interested in. And again, that was Gallery view. I'm going to switch it back to the grid. As we move on over, I'm going to go over here to Images. If I click Images, that pulls up a section with all of the primary photos. This gives me the ability to come down here and click through these and look at the primary photos. So maybe I'm trying to find that brown house that member of the public just drove by. I can go through these rather quickly and look for them. As I'm clicking on the photo, you'll notice down below it turns the particular listing that I'm looking at into that green color, so you know which property it is that you've clicked on. I'm going to go up and turn Images off just by clicking the button. Okay, as far as sorting, we have a standard sort order with our results. It's the same sort order that we've had since the beginning of keeping track of MLS with computers. Our standard sort order is status, school district, price. That's always been the sort order that our MLS system has had. Status, school district, price. It's a 3-level sort. Now, your results grid works very similar to Excel. And so I'm going to show you how you can modify the sort order. I'm just going to come up here in between these two columns, and I'm just going to expand this one a little bit so that you can see that arrow. That arrow indicates to me that I'm sorting by status first. So anytime you see that arrow on one of the headers, that's the field you're sorting by. Now you can click that header and change it to ascending or descending, and you can click any header and sort by any of them. So if you want to change the sort order, you click and it'll modify it, and it'll move that arrow too so that you'll know which field you're sorting by. Now what that does is that changes it to a single level sort. So you see now, right now, I'm sorting by year built rather than status. If you click the sort button, that gives you the ability to do up to a 3-level sort, and you can do ascending or descending. So if you don't like the standard sort order of status, school district, price, you can come in here and change that. Now keep in mind, if you don't sort by status first and your search results have more than one status, then it mixes them all up. So if you have multiple statuses, it's generally best to sort by status first and then anything else you want after that. All right, I'm going to turn the sorting off, and I'm going to turn on filter. Filter gives you the ability to filter down your results. So right here where it says display, it's displaying everything. I can click that and I can say, well, just display the selected ones. Those would be the ones that I have a check mark in front of. Now you'll notice up here on the black toolbar, there's still 10 matches, but it's only displaying 3 of those. So at any time I can come right back over here and change it back, and that will display all 10 again. You also can sort by or filter by status. Now, what this is good for is, let's say you just ran results for a CMA. So you've got actives and pendings and closed, and now you're ready to analyze the data. You can go in and say, okay, show me just the pendings, or show me just the closed. And you can analyze the data one status at a time. All right, I'm turning filter off. Tools, if you click that. Link selected to a contact. If you already have a contact entered into the MLS system, that's covered in the third class. But if you've already entered them in, you can select properties and then choose link to a contact, and it'll push those properties to that particular person. Export images gives you the ability to export images from any of the listings that you have a check mark in front of. Export data gives you the ability to export the data and use it in another program like Excel or Access. Appraisers use this because they have a government form that they have to fill out, and they export the data to do that. Otherwise, unless you're a number cruncher, I doubt that you'll use that feature. And then add selected to my folder just moves any of them that you have a check mark in front of and puts them into the My folder. Now, the one that I skipped, I'm going back to, the default results grid. Right now, you're looking at the default results grid. This is the same grid that we've used in the MLS forever. The same fields in the same order that we've had for years. But sometimes people wish the grid displayed different things. For example, maybe you wish there was a column for acres, or a column for compensation, or showing instructions, or something like that. You can modify the grid and create your own grids to display whatever you want. To do that, you're going to click this little icon right here. That's the Grid Manager. That pulls up the Grid Manager, and basically you have two choices. Do you want to create a new grid, or do you want to copy this one? I highly recommend you choose copy. If you choose create new, then you have to remember to put in address and MLS number and price, all your typical fields. So I'm going to choose copy, and then it asks me to name the grid. Okay, so you name it whatever you want. All of the fields that are currently on the grid are in the included fields column. All of the fields that can be on the grid are in the available fields column. So you basically just want all of the fields that you are interested in seeing in the right-hand column. To do that, you just select the field you want. I double-clicked it, it moved it over. Or you can click on the one you want and hit that little arrow in the middle. That will move it over as well. If there's fields over here that you don't want, you select it. You click the arrow pointing to the left, that removes it from the grid. Once you get all of the fields over here that you want to see on your grid, then what you can do is modify the order, because I don't want acres on the far right end of my grid. So I'll choose acres, and I'll use these arrows to move them around to put them wherever I want. So once you have all of the fields that you want to see on your grid in the order you want to see them, then you just click on Save. Then close it. That will pull up your new grid. Now, a lot of times when it creates a new grid, it spreads all the fields out and makes them really wide like you see here. All you have to do there is get your mouse on the grid, right-click, and choose Auto Fit. Okay, and then that'll fix it for you. So you see now I have acres. Okay, I added acres, and I added a number of stories. Now, if this is the grid that you want to see every time you click on results, this is your favorite grid, you don't want to see the MLS one, you want to see this one, when you're in your grid manager, you can set this one as your default grid so that from this point on, every time you click results, this is the grid that you see. If you like this grid but you don't want to see it every day, it'll always be in your grid list. Okay, these are all of your saved grids. so you can just refer to it at any time. Your default grid, you can't delete it, so it'll always be in there as well. And if you want to go back to the default, you click on it and it'll take you back. Okay, so let's go and get driving directions. Let's say these are the 3 properties that I have checked that I want to go and show. So I need driving directions to get to them. In the upper right corner on the black toolbar is a little car. When you hover, it says directions. Click it. That will open up the driving directions window. The 3 properties I had checked are right here. If they're not in the order that I want to go and show them, I can click and drag the numbers around and modify the order. And it tells you that right here on the screen. You also can add a starting location, like if you want to know how to get from your office to the first location, or your home, or wherever it is you are. I'm going to click the pull down, and I'm going to choose my office. By choosing your office, it knows who you are because you're logged in as you, and so it autofills your office address, and then it still has those 3 locations. If you think you might get lost getting home, you can make it a round trip, and it'll tell you how to get home. Whenever you're ready, you'll click Get Directions, and that'll pull up the directions for you. Okay, so here's your driving directions. There's your total distance, your estimated driving time. There's your map. As you scroll down, it'll give you step-by-step instructions from point A to point B, B to C, and so on. You'll notice in the lower right corner, you have print and email. So, maybe you're sending your client out to go drive by these houses to see if they really want to look at them. You could choose email, push these to your client so they could go and find the properties. Okay, I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to close the driving directions window. That'll take me back to the main Fusion window. All right, if you want to go and look at the details for the properties, there's a couple different ways to do that. One is you can click the MLS number link. That actually opens a separate window and displays that one property information. I prefer to go to the details option. To get there, you can click the magnifying glass, or you can click details up at the top. Details takes you to the full information for each of those properties. Now you'll notice right here I'm looking at 1 of 3. That's because I had 3 properties selected. If I want to see all 10 of those, I can come over here to where it says display and change that, and then it'll display all 10 rather than just the 3 that I had selected. I can arrow through those if I want to go from one to another. Also right here where it says property, this is the property that I'm currently looking at, but I can click the pull down and I can jump to a different property. So that's a great feature. I don't have to go back to the results screen and try and find that one. I can just click here, click on the one I want, and it'll switch me to that particular property. As I'm going through these, if I like them, I can select them right here. Now the report that we're looking at is the agent-only one page. We have the system defaulting to the agent-only one page. This will print, if you print it, it'll print 1 property per page. But some agents don't like this report because it doesn't have all of the fields. You can't fit all of the fields on 1 page. So the Data System Committee determined what fields would be on this report, and that's what's here. So if you don't like this report, that's fine. There's a pull down right here with a bunch of other reports to choose from. You might prefer the agent-only full. That would be all of the fields. Now, if you choose to print it, it's going to print 2 pages per property rather than 1. But when you have time, go through each of these reports, click on them, figure out which ones you like, which ones you don't, and then you can modify it from there. Okay, over in the left-hand column are a bunch of tools These are the same tools that we saw whenever we hovered and we got the bubble window and we had all those tools in that dark green section. Exact same tools, just a different way to get there. So we're going to go through those. All right, the photo gallery, that gives us the ability to look at the photos. So when we click it, it's going to open a separate window and display the photos for us. We can click on the thumbnails over here, and that will pull up the different photos. We also can click through them down here. Okay. And if the agent typed any comments for the photos, you would visually see that on the screen as well. You can have up to 25 photos per listing. The next one, map. Mapping is covered in the Fusion 2 class, so I'm going to skip that. There are some history reports in here, and we're not going to cover those in this class. Open house. If the agent had entered an open house for their property, that would not be grayed out and it wouldn't say 0. So you would know that there's an open house coming up for the property. If the agent has entered a virtual tour for that property, you would see that it's not grayed out. This particular listing isn't. So if I click, it would pull up a virtual tour that the agent or broker had entered. Directions, that's the same that I just showed you, except that this would just be directions to this one property. You will not see the option for edit record. Report a violation gives you the ability to send a violation if you see something on this particular listing. Maybe you see a name and phone number in the remarks or something like that. You can click on report a violation and that'll send an email to the MLS. The next three that have the dollar signs deal with your realist tax system. So when we're on a particular property, if we click realist tax, that's going to open up a separate tab or window, depending on how your computer's set up. It's going to auto log you into realist, and it's going to pull up the tax record for that particular property. So just a quick, easy way to get to the tax record from that property. Again, mine open in a separate tab. So here's my Fusion right here, but then there's my tab with the realist tax. Now, all of the tax records aren't on every listing. Some listings, maybe new construction or a route in a box or vacant land, and that link won't pull a tax record at all. But you'll know because when you click, it'll tell you it didn't find it. Now, once you have this tab open, if you want to get to the full version of Realist, you could click right here, Launch Realist. That will take you to the home page of Realist where you could do any other searches you wanted to do. I'm closing that and going back. Realist Map is different than the Fusion Map. The Realist Map takes you into the Realist Map, which has different functionality. The Realist Map is covered in the Realist class, but I am going to show you one feature. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. That's going to open a separate tab or window, auto log me into Realist, plot this particular property. And the feature I'm going to show is the flood map overlays. This gives you the ability from your listing in Fusion to go directly to the Realist map and see if that particular property is in a flood zone. Okay, so there's my subject property. Now your screen may look more like this with a grid down below, and that's fine. I just changed the settings on mine. To get the flood maps, you're going to click this icon in the upper right that's blue and white. When you hover, it's labeled Boundaries. And then you're just going to put a check mark in front of flood zone. Now give it a second. It's going to auto fill in the overlay maps. And you have a legend across the bottom. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and get rid of that grid down below. And then I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can kind of see this a little bit better. So again, these are flood map overlays. They're all color-coded. You have the legend across the bottom. There is an arrow over here so that you can arrow over and see what code is represented by what color. If you're colorblind, all of the colored areas have the codes. So you can call FEMA, find out what the codes mean, and then you can refer to those. If you can zoom in as much as you need to, so you may have a particular listing that's part in and part out of a flood area, and you can zoom in as close as you want in order to see that. So those are the flood map overlays. Now, if you don't want them on the next time you come into Realist, make sure you come up here and you uncheck flood zone. Otherwise, they'll continue to stay on. Closing that, I'm going back to my main Fusion window. All right, over here, the only other one that deals with Realist is neighborhood info. I'm not going to click on that, but what that does is that just takes you to census data in Realist. You can get to that straight from the tax record in Realist as well, but it's census data based on the property that we're currently looking at. All right, the next one, documents. That lets us know if the agent has loaded any documents for this particular listing. So we can see on this listing there is one document that's been loaded. And when we click it, that's going to log us into the Doc Manager program. And then we can pull up that document. Now, you're required to have your disclosure, disclaimer, lead-based paint on the listing within 5 business days of the list date. So that's probably what it is. And you see document available to view, property condition disclosure. We could click right there and look at that document. The agent can load any documents they'd like for you to see. So you may find things like covenants, plat maps, surveys, that type thing. Okay, the next one, Super Key Box. I'm going to go ahead and click that. This will open up the Super Key Box window. Now, if this is not your listing, the only thing you're going to see when you open that up is View Super Key Box Settings. And if the agent has assigned the key box to the listing, when you click on View Super Key Box Settings, you'll be able to see the hours of that key box because you all can modify the hours of the key box. If this is your listing, you'll see these other 2 options. Assign Super Key Box, which gives you the ability to assign the key box to the listing, and then the Showing Report, which will pull up your showing information for that particular key box. Who showed the listing, when they showed it, their name, their phone number, date and time, that type thing. But again, if it's not your listing, you won't see those 2 options. Okay, and that should be the last tool that you see over there. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to show you is how to email and print. Right up here on the black toolbar, you see it says email and print. When we go into each of these, they look very similar to each other. I'm going to go ahead and choose email. And it asks you, do you want to email the single record that you're on? Or if you need to switch, you can switch to a different record. Do you want to email the ones you had check marks in front of? Or do you want to email all of them? And then you can pick which report that you want to email. We have it defaulting to the public full. It is limiting you to the ability to email only those documents that are not in violation of our rules. So you would select whichever one you want. You choose email. You put who it's to, type your subject and message, and send. If you want to print, you click on Print. You'll see you have the same 3 options, single property, those I have selected, or all. Do you want to print the grid, the results grid, that's the 1-line grid, or reports? And if you want to print reports, you can select which reports you want to print. And you can select more than one at a time. So if you wanted to print the agent only and the public full, you could do that. You can also have it include your search criteria as well as some statistics, which would be mins, max, average type information based on the properties you have selected. You can preview the print job before you're going to print it. You have the print button right here. You also can save this as a PDF if you'd like. I'm going to click cancel.